Why do some of the most unremarkable, predictable, even dull men rise to heights of power that the dazzling and flamboyant never touch? Today, we shall uncover a truth hidden in plain sight. Why being boring is not weakness, but one of the greatest sources of power. You think the world rewards charisma and spectacle. Yet I tell you, it secretly crowns the quiet and consistent. And by the end of this lesson, you will know how to turn your ordinary habits into weapons of influence. In the grand theater of power, it is rarely the dazzling performer who holds the longest reign. Instead, it is the man who appears ordinary, predictable, and even boring, who often secures his place in history. Why? Because in a world intoxicated with spectacle, predictability becomes the perfect disguise. Let us explore this illusion, for within it lies one of the greatest strategies of influence. When a man is seen as boring, society places him in the background. He becomes like furniture in a familiar room. Noticed, yet unremarkable, present, yet unfeared. This lack of attention is not weakness, it is a shield. The flamboyant attract eyes, and where eyes gather, so too does envy, competition, and scrutiny. But the predictable man, who raises no alarms, is allowed to exist without challenge. He is the guest at the banquet whom no one bothers to poison, because he is not perceived as a threat. This is the advantage of being unremarkable. Those who seem boring are overlooked, and in being overlooked, they are freed from the heavy chains of expectation. The world does not demand brilliance from them. They are not asked to prove themselves daily, nor are they constantly tested by rivals who seek to topple them. Instead, they are allowed to move quietly, to study the battlefield while others parade in the open. The illusion of predictability grants them a form of invisibility, and invisibility is one of the greatest weapons of strategy. Understand this power is not always seized by force, but by patience and positioning. The man who appears predictable is underestimated, and when men are underestimated, they are given freedoms denied to the mighty. No one watches the quiet clerk in the corner, yet he may have the keenest eye for opportunity. No one fears the dull official who nods silently in meetings, yet he may be the one who knows every weakness of his colleagues. Boring men, predictable men, live in the blind spot of others, and what grows in the blind spot often becomes the most dangerous force. In courts, in councils, in kings, the predictable man is always welcomed. Why? Because leaders prefer reliability over brilliance. A brilliant man may one day outshine his master, but a predictable man will never outshine anyone. Or so it appears. Kings keep such men close because they seem harmless. Lords trust them because they seem incapable of betrayal. Yet history teaches us that the most trusted, precisely because they were underestimated, have betrayed with the most devastating precision. The mask of predictability shields the ambitions of those who know how to wear it well. The illusion also protects from envy. Consider how envy destroys. The charismatic, the bold, the constantly entertaining. They attract admirers, yes, but they also awaken resentment. Men envy those who dazzle, not those who bore. A boring man is rarely envied, and so he walks through life unchallenged. His path is cleared by his very lack of glamour. The flamboyant are attacked, the fascinating are tested, but the boring slip through the cracks of ambition. In this quiet passage, they accumulate influence while others are distracted by their own need to perform. Predictability also disarms suspicion. If a man does what is expected, day after day, he seems incapable of deception. His habits become so familiar that no one questions his intentions. And when suspicion dies, trust is born. Imagine the power of trust, especially when it is given blindly. The predictable man becomes the one who is handed the keys, the one allowed into secret rooms, the one who is never watched when all others are. This misplaced trust is not earned by skill or brilliance, but by the illusion of harmlessness. And yet, in the right hands, this harmlessness becomes the most potent form of control. Observe also how predictability gives stability. In a chaotic world, people crave the steady and familiar. They cling to those who provide no surprises, because surprises, even pleasant ones, are dangerous. The boring man offers no surprises, and thus becomes the safe harbor in turbulent seas. Others come to depend on him, not because he inspires, but because he reassures. Dependence is another word for power, and the predictable man weaves it into his relationships without effort. Think carefully on this. The illusion of predictability is not simply about appearing dull. It is about weaponizing dullness. It is about understanding that in a world where most men crave attention, to not crave it is itself a power. The predictable man is the shadow among flames. He avoids the heat, yet he remains when the fire burns out. He is the silence in a room of voices, the one ignored, yet the one who remembers every word. He is underestimated by all, but because of that, he is free to observe, to calculate, and to strike when the time is most favorable. Now we turn to the second truth. one even more dangerous than the first. If predictability grants invisibility, then invisibility allows for the concealment of power. Here lies the genius of appearing boring. Your true strength is hidden beneath the plain mask, and those who dismiss you prepare their own downfall. The greatest advantage of the unremarkable man is that no one suspects him of ambition. He is treated as background, as furniture, as a face among the crowd. In this lack of suspicion, he gains the freedom to act while others sleep. Those who dazzle the world must always display their weapons. They cannot hide their hunger for recognition. But the boring man has no need to show his weapons. He keeps them hid until the moment of necessity. His silence, his dullness, his very lack of brilliance all serve as the cloak that shields his ambition. Understand this: power that is seen is power that is feared, and power that is feared attracts enemies. But power that is concealed attracts nothing. It grows in the dark quietly, steadily, without opposition. By the time others recognize it, it has already taken root so deeply that it cannot be uprooted. The flamboyant general wins applause, but also draws every rival against him. The boring administrator, overlooked and ignored, slowly becomes the man everyone depends on, the one who holds the keys to every chamber, the one whose signature determines the fate of others. He seemed dull, and so no one noticed the empire he was building behind closed doors. Concealed power thrives because the world underestimates appearances. Men are deceived by spectacle. They believe the one who shines brightest must be the strongest, and the one who appears ordinary must be the weakest. But strength often hides where no one bothers to look. The mask of boringness is therefore not weakness, but a deliberate disguise. And the man who wears it can act freely, for his movements provoke no alarm. He can whisper in the right ears, sow seeds in secret places, forge alliances in silence, and all the while his rivals laugh at his dullness. That latter blinds them to the truth: the dull man is arranging their downfall. Think of how envy poisons power. Men despise those who climb too quickly or too visibly. But who despises the boring? Who envies the man of routine, the man who speaks little, the man who shows no fire? No one. He is free of envy, free of hostility, free of suspicion. And in this freedom, he gains the most precious condition of all: time. Time to climb, time to gather strength, time to prepare. When his rivals are busy fighting each other for the crown of brilliance, he, unnoticed, is shaping the very throne upon which they all wish to sit. The greatest deceptions are not found in words, but in appearances. When you seem predictable, you disarm others. When you seem boring, you cause others to dismiss you. And when you are dismissed, you are free to rise without challenge. This is why concealment is so powerful. It places you beneath the radar of ambition, where no arrow is aimed at you. And only once you are beyond danger do you reveal the true measure of your strength. Consider also the role of trust. A man who seems dull is considered harmless. Others trust him with tasks, with secrets, with responsibilities they would never entrust to someone more brilliant or threatening. Slowly, without resistance, he's given access to the very mechanisms of power. One document here, one decision there, and soon the boring man holds more influence than the charismatic who entertains the court. Concealed power is not seized violently. It is handed to him freely by those who never thought to fear him. What makes this concealment so potent is that it creates surprise. In politics, in war, in daily life, the greatest victories come from striking where the enemy does not expect. The boring man becomes invisible, and therefore he becomes unpredictable in the only way that matters. When the moment of revelation comes, imagine the terror of an opponent who suddenly realizes that the man he never considered a rival is, in fact, the master of the game. That realization arrives too late, and by then, the boring man has already won. To conceal one's power is also to conserve it. The flamboyant exhausts his strength and displays. He burns his energy keeping his audience entertained, for if he stops shining, he is forgotten. The boring man spends no energy on performance. He invests his strength quietly, without waste, waiting for the precise moment when action counts. When he finally moves, it is decisive, because every ounce of his force has been saved for that moment. This is not weakness. It is the economy of ambition, the cold mathematics of power. This is why boring men rise in hierarchies. The talented are feared, the ambitious are resisted, the dazzling are envied. But the boring man glides upward, because no one thinks to stop him. He becomes the confidant of kings, the manager of empires, the holder of secrets. By the time others recognize his position, they realize that his influence has become impossible to remove. The mask of dullness has done its work. It has concealed power long enough for it to become unshackable. If concealed power is the art of hiding ambition, then patience is the art of keeping it alive until the moment of execution. The world belongs not to the restless, nor to the impulsive, but to those who know how to wait. And the boring man, dismissed by others as slow or unremarkable, masters patience like a weapon sharpened in silence. Patience is misunderstood. Most men see it as passivity, as weakness, as doing nothing while the world moves forward. But in truth, patience is not the absence of action. It is the preparation for decisive action. It is storing strength when others waste theirs. It is observing when others rush blindly. It is knowing that time itself can fight on your side, if only you have the discipline to let it. The boring man, content to repeat his routines, to endure without constant excitement, has already mastered what the ambitious often fail to grasp: the ability to wait without despair. In courts and councils, those who crave glory rush forward, eager to seize the spotlight. They expose themselves, make mistakes, and burn their chances quickly. But the patient man, disguised as dull and steady, lingers in the shadows, saying little, moving less, letting others reveal their weaknesses. Each rash move from his rivals becomes another piece of information for him. While they consume themselves in battles of ego, he gathers knowledge. Knowledge is power, but only patience can collect it without interruption. Patience also builds endurance, and endurance outlasts brilliance. The dazzling star burns brightly, but burns out quickly. The patient man is like the stone fortress, seemingly lifeless, but still standing after storms, wars, and centuries. Others rise and fall, while he remains. And in his persistence, he gains what they could not: stability, the kind of power that is not won in a single moment, but accumulated slowly until it becomes unshakable. The boring man who practices patience outlasts scandals, fashions, and enemies. He wins not by speed, but by remaining when all others have fallen. To master patience is also to master timing. Every strategy, no matter how clever, fails if executed at the wrong time. The impatient strike too soon, revealing their hand before the enemy is vulnerable. But the patient wait until the exact moment, when the enemy's guard is down, when opportunity is ripe, when a single move will have the greatest effect. Then, with the swiftness of a blade, they strike. The power of patience lies not in waiting forever, but in waiting just long enough. The boring man, ignored and underestimated, has all the time he needs to choose the perfect moment. Patience also shields against provocation. How many men lose everything because they could not control their impulses? A single insult, a single slight, and they respond with fury, revealing their temper and exposing their vulnerabilities. The patient man does not take the bait. He absorbs the insult, endures the slight, and waits. In waiting, he gains control over his enemies, for nothing unsettles a man more than when his provocation fails. The boring man, who seems too dull to react, is in truth too disciplined to be manipulated. His calmness is not passivity, it is power disguised as indifference. The world moves in cycles, and patience allows a man to ride these cycles without being destroyed by them. Fortune rises and falls, favor comes and goes, storms arrive and pass. The impatient man believes every moment of misfortune is permanent, and he panics. The patient man knows that no storm lasts forever. He endures through hardship, conserving his strength, until the winds of fortune turn once again in his favor. The boring man, accustomed to routine and slow movement, is uniquely equipped to survive these cycles. His power does not depend on sudden bursts of luck, but on his ability to endure the turning of seasons. Consider also how patience turns weakness into strength. A man who lacks charisma, who lacks brilliance, who lacks spectacle cannot win quickly. But with patience, he does not need to. He builds slowly, brick by brick, relationship by relationship, until the structure of his influence towers over those who once seemed greater. What he cannot achieve in a day, he achieves in a decade. What he cannot seize through force, he secures through persistence. And when others look back, they realize that while they were chasing quick victories, the boring man's patience has given him dominion. Patience also teaches detachment. To wait without despair requires the ability to master one's emotions, to not be enslaved by the passions of the moment. This mastery of self is the rarest form of power, for a man who rules himself cannot be ruled by others. The boring man, immune to excitement, immune to spectacle, immune to provocation, rules himself completely, and by ruling himself, he becomes capable of ruling others. Now we come to the last truth in this chain, the one that transforms invisibility and patience into actual dominion. If being boring grants you freedom from suspicion, and if patience gives you mastery over time, then silence becomes your hidden fortress. Here lies the silent advantage, the kind of power that grows not through noise, but through quiet certainty, consistency, and control. The world is loud. Men compete to be heard, to be seen, to outshine and outtalk each other. They mistake noise for influence, believing that those who shout the loudest hold the greatest sway. But power, true power, rarely announces itself. It does not need to. The most dangerous currents are the ones you do not hear until they have already pulled you under. Silence has this same quality. The man who appears boring because he is silent, steady, and consistent is often the one shaping the very conditions under which the loud must perform. People cling to the predictable because predictability comforts them. In a world of chaos, the one who is silent and stable becomes the anchor. Leaders crave such men. Crowds trust them. Rivals ignore them. And in that trust, in that dependence, in that underestimation lies the advantage. The boring man is always present, always reliable, always the one who fulfills obligations without drama. He is not admired, perhaps, but he is depended upon. Dependence is a far greater prize than admiration, for admiration is fleeting, while dependence traps others in your orbit. This silent advantage is invisible at first, yet it accumulates like wealth. Each time a man is relied upon, his influence grows. Each time he delivers without complaint, his value deepens. He does not dazzle, but he becomes irreplaceable. The flamboyant who entertains the room can be discarded once the applause fades. The boring man who maintains the machinery cannot be discarded without consequence. Herein lies his power. His very dullness cements him into positions others cannot remove him from. He becomes the foundation others stand on, and foundations are never questioned until they are gone. Silence also grants control over perception. A man who speaks little leaves others to fill the gaps of his intention. His silence is a mirror in which others project their own fears, hopes, and assumptions. This projection gives him power without him needing to do anything at all. Rivals wonder what he is thinking. Allies imagine he is wiser than he is. Superiors conclude that he is loyal. In truth, he may be none of these things. But because he does not contradict their imagination, they believe it anyway. Silence lets him wear 1,000 masks without ever lifting a finger. Consider also how silence shields from error. Most men betray themselves not through what they do, but through what they say. Words reveal weakness, betray ambition, and spark resistance. The silent man avoids this entirely. He makes no promises that can be broken, no boasts that can be disproven, no declarations that can be used against him. While others are trapped by their own words, he remains free. His dullness, mistaken for lack of thought, is in fact the refusal to expose his thoughts to those who would twist them. The silent advantage extends to action as well. By moving steadily, predictably, without spectacle, the boring man accumulates strength unnoticed. He does not alarm others, does not provoke them, does not awaken their envy. They leave him alone, and in leaving him alone, they give him space to grow. This growth is invisible until it is too late. He becomes like the tree whose roots spread unseen, until suddenly it towers over the garden, and no one remembers when it became so large. The silence of his rise is what makes it unstoppable. The world distrusts the unpredictable, yet it trusts the consistent. A man who is loud and flamboyant is tolerated, but never truly trusted, for he may turn his brilliance against his allies tomorrow. A man who is boring, silent, and reliable is trusted fully, because he gives no reason to doubt. This trust is more valuable than any applause. Trust opens doors, grants access, and removes obstacles. The boring man walks freely where the dazzling are barred, simply because he appears safe. Yet inside that trust lies the seat of control, for once he is inside, he can reshape what others depend upon him for. The silent advantage also lies in the ability for others to reveal themselves. In silence, you are not exposed. In silence, you force others to talk, to reveal their fears, to confess their desires. The boring man who listens more than he speaks collects secrets while giving none. Over time, this collection becomes power in its purest form, knowledge of other, without them having knowledge of you. And when knowledge is unequal, power is unequal. This is the final face of the boring man's hidden strength, his silence, his steadiness, his dull exterior, all combined to make him the safest choice in a world afraid of danger. People crown him without knowing it. They give him responsibility, authority, and access, never realizing that in doing so they have handed him the very levers of power. And when at last they awaken to the truth, it is far too late, for the silent advantage has already reshaped the entire game in his favor, and so we see the truth hidden beneath the mask of dullness. What the world dismisses as boring is, in fact, a strategy of the highest order. To appear predictable is to walk unnoticed. To conceal power is to move without resistance. To master patience is to outlast every rival. And to wield silence is to bind others in trust while holding them in your grasp. The world crowns those who dazzle with noise, but it obeys those who endure in silence. This is the paradox of power. The fire burns brightly and quickly, but the stone, boring, unmoving, unremarkable, remains long after the fire has turned to ash. Embrace the art of being underestimated, for in that disguise lies the strength to rule, without ever seeming to reach for the throne.